Have you ever considered what an amazing version of your inner self would be like? Maybe that's just me wondering. Over the past weeks, the short videos that I get fed to me by my Instagram app have focused on psychological wellness. Somehow, the app knows I've been going through some stuff in life and going into a period of deep self-reflection. For those of you who don't know, if you set it, and sometimes even when you don't, the apps on our smartphones are constantly learning our needs. It looks at what our interests are, including our pictures and comments, and it feeds us with more of it, of more of what interests us. On the one hand, it's efficient. I don't need to see videos of what a 16-year-old girl would want. I want to see the videos that are pertinent to my life. On the other hand, it's also very sneaky. The app wants you to get hooked so they can expose you to advertising and therefore influence you to buy goods or services. Regardless, my Instagram app knows that I'm going through some stuff and so sends me short videos of psychologists telling me about how to find healing, how to be a better person, and how to be emotionally mature. Now, I don't think that's all that bad. I like the free knowledge they are teaching me, and I find it enlightening and useful. A number of videos have talked about how we tend to flee from our emotions rather than sit with them and listen to what they have to tell us. We tend to flee from our emotions rather than processing them through by crying with them, by being frustrated with them, and by learning from our emotions. I found that insight to be useful. I also see that insight from the light of the gospel. Jesus never taught us to flee from our emotions, to flee from our challenges, but to take up our cross and follow him. Jesus never taught us to lock ourselves in the upper rooms of our fears, but he empowered us with the Spirit to face them. Another theme from the videos I've been watching have to do with attachment theory. For those of you who don't know, attachment theory has become popular among people today, especially those who are dealing with relationship challenges. According to the theory, our childhood experiences help form our attachment type, and there are 4 attachment types: secure, anxious, avoidant, and disoriented. Now, some of us grew up in stable homes, where our feelings were validated without punishment. We felt reassured, safe, understood, comforted, and valued. As adults, we are able to regulate our emotions and be emotionally available to people. We are able to communicate our needs and boundaries well, connect well with people, deal with conflict well, and have a high self-esteem. These people have a secure attachment type. Others of us grew up in homes with strict or emotionally distant and absent caregivers. We were left to fend for ourselves and were expected to be independent. Our feelings were unnoticed or worse, rejected. We had parents who were often busy, somewhat disinterested, and concerned with grades, chores, and other manner of things rather than feelings, hopes, dreams, and fears. As adults, we avoid emotional or physical intimacy, having a strong sense of independence, are uncomfortable expressing feelings, and can be dismissive of others, and prefer to be with ourselves rather than interacting with others. These people have an avoidant attachment type. Others of us grew in homes where caregivers weren't attuned to our needs. We had difficulty experiencing security from them, and so when our caregivers left, we experienced stress. We had parents who were too coddling, or were easily overwhelmed, or pushed us away, or worse, made us feel responsible for their feelings. As adults, we tend to be clingy, are sensitive to criticism, need constant approval, become jealous easily, and fear rejection and abandonment. These people have an anxious attachment type. Finally, there's those of us who had extremely challenging childhoods with parents who were extremely inconsistent. We faced significant trauma, neglect, or abuse. And as adults, we have mood and personality disorders. We self-harm and often abuse substances. These people have a disoriented attachment type. Now, even if there are 4 types, it's possible to be a mixture of 1 or 2 or more of them. No one is totally just one or the other, and attachment theory is just that, a theory. but it seems to be proven more and more. I found attachment theory to be helpful in recognizing why I do what I do and why I feel the way I do. Attachment theory also helps individuals by giving them strategies to deal with their challenges and strategies to help them relate better to people with other attachment types. I think we can see these attachment types at play in today's gospel story, and we can see how Jesus helps us face our challenges so we can become emotionally secure. From the beginning, we can see that Jesus nurtured a stable and loving relationship with his apostles. We know that because they were willing to follow him, in this case, to go up the mountain. The apostles heard from his teachings and witnessed his miracles, proving that he was trustworthy to them. He validated their emotional needs, but also loved them enough to have boundaries so they could make their own mistakes and learn and grow from them. What's more, Jesus, like a loving parent, was not afraid of being vulnerable to his apostles. He also showed how he was able to be so vulnerable. He knew who he was. He knew he was beloved by his Father, a good Father. Jesus felt safe enough to talk to his Father openly, honestly, regularly. You might recall he called his Father Abba, which means Daddy. No doubt he felt reassured, understood, comforted, and valued. Now, nothing says like you're valued, like a voice from heaven saying, "This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to him." He trusted his Father so much that he was able to face the hardest decision in his life. He was able to be obedient despite the cost of his life. Jesus was so secure in his Father's love that not even death conquered him. And of course, we see that Jesus' belovedness enabled him to love others. Jesus was secure and so knew when to back off to pray and take time to himself. And he knew when to lean forward, challenging others and risking his life. Embracing our belovedness is necessary, an important step. In doing so, we don't need to lean on others for validation, but we can lean on God who dwells in us. We don't need to do meaningless things that superficially boost our self-esteem. Rather, we can look within to see that we are loved unconditionally. We can find a deep and life-giving security in God. Embracing our belovedness as Jesus did enables us to feel secure. Embracing our belovedness as Jesus did enables us to love and do good for others. Embracing our belovedness as Jesus did enables us to hold space for others. In my brief experiences of ministry at the Edmonton Remand Center, I was always astonished at the intense faith of some of the inmates. I believe much of that was because in God they found a good Father, especially since many never had good earthly caregivers themselves. Let's not forget, Christ is in the least of these, including the imprisoned. And they too are beloved children of God. So then, what do we make of the Transfiguration itself? The word transfigure means to transform into something more beautiful or elevated. The dazzling white clothes represent that. Perhaps we can see Jesus' transfiguration as representing the fullness of Jesus' being on the inside. At the beginning, I asked you, have you ever wondered what an amazing version of your inward self would look like? Perhaps Jesus achieved his amazing version of himself, and so that was revealed to his apostles and to us, so that we can see what happens when we live out our belovedness. There's one more theme of videos that I seem to be bombarded with on Instagram. They are lists from psychologists that indicate signs of emotional maturity. Here are 5 ways you know someone is mature. Here are 10 signs that someone is emotionally mature. There are so many lists, and I find it hard not measuring myself every time I hear a new list. But in a way, I think it's a good thing. It helps me to see how I measure up and what more I need to do. So here are 8 ways that I've found that someone is emotionally mature. Number 1, they are empathetic. That is, they're able to understand and share the feelings of another. Number two, they're able to recognize, name their own feelings and share them with others. Number three, they're flexible and open-minded. Number four, they form healthy relationships. Number five, they take responsibility for their actions. Number six, they set healthy boundaries. 7, they're able to manage conflicts. And number 8, they can manage stress in healthy ways. Now, Jesus no doubt was an emotionally mature person. His empathy enabled him to forgive and heal. His self-awareness enabled him to know when to pray to his Father. His open-mindedness enabled him to befriend tax collectors and prostitutes. His belovedness enabled him to form healthy relationships. His wisdom enabled him to set healthy boundaries. His sense of justice enabled him to manage conflicts. And his faith enabled him to face suffering and transcend death. I suggest we see Jesus' transfiguration as an outward manifestation of his maturity. Maybe that's a stretch. I don't know. Maybe you've met someone who is emotionally mature. Perhaps it is like they dazzle you with their life. Maybe that person is you, dazzling us with your maturity, rooted in your belovedness. Today marks the end of the season of Epiphany. It began with the wise men finding the baby Jesus manifest to them in darkness. They traveled far and wide to find the key to life's fulfillment. Throughout the season, we heard of God manifesting God's self to the apostles by calling to them. God calls us in whatever state of security we find ourselves in. God calls and says, "You are my beloved. Live in my light." This week, we enter into the season of Lent with Ash Wednesday. The story of Transfiguration is a foreshadowing of what is to come at the end of our Lenten journey. I'm coming to appreciate that it takes work to be emotionally mature, to live truly as God's beloved child. Many journeys up and down the mountains of Transfiguration, many Lents and Easter. I hope one day I can live fully as God's beloved, secure in God's love, emotionally mature, so I can dazzle to those around me with my life. As we continue to journey together dazzling lives, may we always keep our minds on Jesus, who reveals to us the fullness of life.